Yeah, I think divorce comes up in everyone's mind, or at least people who are
At some
married.
point or another, yeah.
Yeah, like just playing it out, like what would it look like? Like if you're not having an argument or a fight enough to make you at least think about it, then I don't truly believe you have a great marriage.
Then you're just sedating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the conversation? Like if one person is thinking about divorce, this isn't working for me anymore, I think I want a divorce. It's got to be like that, right?
You would think. I mean, you would think that the other person would be expecting it in some way, like not feeling the connection. I mean, I'm sure there are cases where it definitely is like, it's a slap in the face. Like somebody's like, wait a minute, what? I thought we were great. Like, how did this all happen? Yeah. And I think that happens probably a lot in people cheating and things like that.
So let's set the frame.
Mm-hmm.
The conversation you should have, the conversation you need to have before you have a divorce when you haven't cheated.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's one
fair.
thing to be like, oh, I'm seeing someone. Because I think that's a whole different game.
Yeah, agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, general unhappiness in your marriage. Like, I think you see this when the kids are out of school and they've moved on, empty nesters, like, who am I now?
Yeah.
Or
maybe people worked for a long time. Now they're retired. Now they have to spend time together. And they're like looking at this relationship like, wow.
Or they're newlyweds and they're like, this is not what I thought it would be like to be married.
Yeah.
I think you have to have some clarity. I think the first conversation you need to have with the person you need to have it with is yourself. Why do I want a divorce? What do you think most people's answers are?
I think most people project to the other person. This person's not showing up for me. I don't feel loved. I don't feel desired. I don't feel like, they're showing up. I don't feel like they care. They feel a sense of rejection. They feel a sense of abandonment, right?
Because I'm looking at it like, how is my life going to be different without this other person? Because rarely is it the other person 100%.
Right.
Takes two.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think before you start pointing that finger this way, right?
Yeah.
You need to take a little inventory, have a truthful conversation with yourself. Most people aren't willing to do that.
Right. I think it's important to have the conversation with yourself 100%, but I also think it is important to get a third-party feedback. That's not your significant other, and that's not just your best friend.
That's hard. That's third-party feedback.
If I was contemplating getting divorced, right, and I was like, this is just not working out, of course I would have conversations with my friends first, right? Mm-hmm. But my friends are always going to side with me most of the time.
Yes.
So it's a biased opinion. So if I was really looking at it in like, hey, I don't want to get divorced, but like I feel like it's the next step, I think it would be important to have a conversation with a professional in some way, like a healer or a therapist or somebody that could give some light and give some clarity around the things that I was feeling. And some, like you've helped people that were on the brink of divorce and helped them look at their relationships and go, holy shit, like we're not the only ones dealing with this. Because I feel like a lot of people in relationships that aren't going well feel alone or feel like they have major problems that other couples don't have or that they can't get past. And it comes back to the truth conversation, whether you're willing to have that with yourself or whether you're willing to have somebody kind of hold up a mirror and be like, are you really telling the truth?
I think people are jumping over a lot of steps between this is what I expect our marriage to be to I think I need a divorce.
Yeah.
Like there's so many conversations and so many actions that could be had prior to that. And instead of being like, I can exhaust every other option possible, including and starting with going internal first, I'm just going to jump to the easy way out. Because that's where we got to. We got to the point where the easiest way out is to avoid and ignore and just throw in the towel. Mm-hmm. So when people ask me, I'm always like, do I have your consent? Because if you ask me a question, we're going to get into truth very quickly. Mm-hmm. And in that truth, I'm going to then start with you, right? Because what we usually find triggering in other people is what we are projecting onto them. It's usually us. And it's like, it's hard to really feel that, like, oh, that person's an asshole. Well, something about that person is reminding that you're an asshole.
Right.
Nobody wants to say that. It's mirrors, right?
Yeah.
So if you're having a problem with somebody else, you're like, uh-oh, you're not feeling love, and this is simple, but really get into it for a second, like feel what I'm saying, is if you're not feeling love, what most likely is happening?
You're probably holding back and not giving love.
You're not giving love. I think divorce is like we're searching for somebody else to solve our problems. Like we're giving up control.
Mm-hmm.
Every time, I've only been to therapy twice, with couples therapy, with you and Nikki, who I dated for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And in both instances, it was kind of like, this is me paraphrasing, it was like, go work on you first before you come here.
Right.
Like you're bringing and it just depends, like whose turn is it to feel like shit today?
Right.
Like it's either my turn and I feel attacked, and then the minute the other person's turn, you're like, yay, I'm free. And all I'm taking is like, it's like we're doing individual therapy in front of each other.
Right. Totally.
I think the first conversation of truth is like, should you be judging somebody else, or is it really something that you have to do work on?
Right.
And then what I say is, if the best version of the person you love showed up, and the best version of you showed up, would you still love each other?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, at first, it's like, no, that's how deep they get. They're like, nope. I'm like, really? You're telling me you've given all this time, you fell in love with this person, a version of this person that you don't think they can get to anymore, right? And so you're really falling out of your love with yourself. And like, that's when it gets, the vibrational frequency of it is like, it's completely off, because somebody could be vibrating high, someone could be vibrating low. Usually in this case, both people are vibrating
at a very low place. Yeah. Yeah. And they're probably dealing with unresolved issues. The same fight's probably coming up multiple times. You know, they're never resolving that, or they're never having a safe communication about that issue, right? Where they feel secure and safe and can have the conversation and speak their truth without the other person feeling attacked.
Yes.
Or feeling like the other person's going to reject them. I mean, a lot of the times when we've dealt with it in our relationship, I mean, it's been to the point where one of us isn't feeling desired, right? And the other person is either in their own head or doing their own thing, focusing on something else. And in our case, like a lot of times it's been like, oh, well, I didn't know you were feeling like that. Like, thank you for letting me know, because I was just focusing on something else.
Yeah, the communication completely, it's not even like the real communication.
Yeah.
Because you could talk without talking.
Right.
You can spend time with someone without actually being present.
Right.
Right. And so it's easy to say it's a conversation of truth, but if you're willing to go there, you got to be willing to take it too.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, you got to start remembering that this isn't a war. Like when we get into this, your shield goes up and my sword comes out.
Right.
And like you use your shield as almost a weapon. And the more the shield goes up, the more I start hacking away with the sword, just hacking away. And that makes your shield go up even more. And I start hacking even harder. And it's like to the point where it's just all out warfare.
Yeah.
Rather than be like, I got to put away the sword and you got to take down the shield. And then you got to hold space.
Yep.
It's one of those things. It's tough to talk like this. Like, here's what I'm feeling. And it's, I've noticed we've gotten good at this, or at least I have. Here's how I'm feeling. And I'm sure it's because of this abandonment issue or this rejection issue, or because I'm going through something in my life. I feel like I am showing up to this situation in scarcity or in rejection or whatever. That being said, I also feel like you aren't communicating with me. So it's like, it's this weird thing, because we've talked about the attachment styles, but it's like, I want to be vulnerable, hold space, and honest, but at the same time, hold you accountable to you being vulnerable, holding space, and being honest, so that we can both get to this place stripped down in honesty and both owning our shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes this like empathy for each other, understanding and communication, rather than keeping score and who's going to fucking win.
And attack. Yeah. And attacking each other. Yeah. And it's interesting because when you're bringing up all this, I'm going, how many, and it's hard for us because we've never gotten divorced, right? Yeah. So I'd be so curious to have conversations with couples that have gone through this process. I mean, my godparents literally remarried each other like twice.
Yeah.
Like they were married, they had 2 kids, they got divorced. She had a kid with somebody else. They got remarried.
That's very unique.
But it'd be so interesting to have the conversation with them. Like, how did you rekindle this? Like, how did you guys like have this conversation again? Like, no, I really actually do love you and I want to be with you.
Or how many people have had conversations about divorce and recovered?
Yeah. I think probably a lot more than we realized.
I mean, I feel like our relationship is so strong and we came close.
Yeah.
Right. And it was so much more than just you being mad about a vacation and me being stupid about a wacky anxiety. Like it was deep-seated stuff. Like, you know, you for so long not speaking your piece about, you're not letting yourself enjoy the day-to-day, and you're putting all of this pressure, all of this enjoyment only into the vacation. Like, this is the only time I'm gonna let my hair down. And so then I broke your frame versus me going like, I have this need to control and this is so new. So like the very thing that was your escape was my prison. So we were hitting, right? And it had nothing to do with the actual vacation. It had to do with us having to deal with shit in our lives.
Yeah, both of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I went from like, oh my God, I don't want this woman to divorce me. Then, holy shit, if she's going to divorce me over this, then screw her. And then going, wait a minute, we have to have a true conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And there's this book I'm reading. It's about it's conflict. And it talks about looking at like the worst case scenario, right? Like so many people hold back this conversation for so long. So they're just building resentment and they're looking at their spouse with like disgust. They're like, I can't even look at him. I can't touch him. I'm saying it coming from a woman's standpoint, but they, instead of having the uncomfortable conversation, they're willing to go through the uncomfortableness of getting divorced or bringing up divorce or, you know, moving on with somebody else or whatever they decide to do. But it's almost looking at it like if you're willing to go through that uncomfortable life cycle of being divorced and going through that whole process, especially with kids, then you should be able to hold that uncomfortable conflict resolution conversation and see if it happens. And like if it still ends up to where you can't meet and you can't see eye to eye and it still ends up in divorce, okay, fine. But how many people are holding back that integral part of that conversation in their relationship that they could just have and save their marriage?
Or how many people call it separated? Yeah. Right? That in between.
Yep.
I think it could be, if you play with it, it could be the sexiest, most interesting thing. Like playing it out and pretending you're divorcing, going on dates and like looking at all the tension of not being together and then
or just try going out with your girlfriends and look around you and be like, God damn it, I'm so glad I'm married.
Yeah, that's like, but if you're going to go through a separation or you're going to go through a divorce, like this is the time to speak up.
Yeah.
Right? And that goes back to the whole 10-year marriage concept. You should be having, if you're going to re-up, it's the same conversation of should you get divorced, just in a different way.
Right.
Right? And so I think playing it out of really feeling it, really seeing like, what would this look like? And then let me see if I can like rekindle it. Because then like what happens is, I've seen this, maybe the husband is completely asleep, doesn't realize the wife is like, I am not feeling this anymore. She finally says like, I'm serious, like you need to move out. And all of a sudden he's attuned to this woman, respects her again, sees her again, and just wants to win her over again. And then maybe they figure it out. She finally gets it, but she doesn't trust it because she's seen this game before. So has he really changed? Is he really going to see me?
Yeah.
Right? And then continuing that on. Right? And so it forces someone to be like, wait a minute, see me. And I think that's the duality of this conversation. Owning your side of it, giving, and maybe the husband or the wife doesn't see that the other person's trying. Maybe they don't see like the negligee they put on or the toy they buy or the attempt to go on vacation. Maybe they're just so gone, like they could put in all of the work and it does not matter until the person finally calls their own bluff and goes, I'm done. And it takes them everything to get to that point, and the other person goes, wait, it can't be too late.
Right. And unfortunately, sometimes it probably is, you know? But that's why it's so important to just have these conversations up front and just be like totally fucking vulnerable and honest and just be like, here it is. This is how I'm not happy.
Speaking of books, crucial conversations. Like how many times are you allowing the thing to happen without colliding?
Right.
And not colliding in war, but colliding like, no, we're going to talk this through. We're going to try something different. We're not going to let this drift and leak and accept the fact that it's going to be work. The best relationships are the ones you work the most at.
Totally.
The best bodies are the ones you work the most. The best businesses are the ones you work on. You got to work on this. You're not just going to be like, oh, we're married and everything works out perfectly.
And it's going to be messy either way.
Yeah.
It's going to be messy trying to make it work and doing all the things that it takes to make a marriage work and the work on yourselves and the work together. And it's also going to be messy if you get divorced and it's going to suck. So either way, if it's going to like be difficult, like you have to have that conversation with yourself and be like, do I even want this? Do I want this relationship? And do I see myself in the next 10 years with this person?
So, I think then is disingenuous as hell. The escape. Usually I feel like the woman's good at this. And this is probably over stereotypical. I'm ready for
all the backlash in the comments.
Like you start getting your shit together. You get in shape even before you get divorced. You start really putting it all together. And then you just go drop the bomb right when you got it like on point, right? Rather than give the other person.
That's probably how I would do it if I was doing it. And it's so unfair because it's like you're not even giving the other person to like a chance to step up, It's like, you fucking plotted this? Like, are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. And then at that point, it's like, all right, well, I guess if that's what I dealt with. And you can't live in that like, oh my God, you have to own it. I think even when you get cheated on, this is probably a very unpopular take. Even when you get cheated on, you're responsible for a portion of the fact that you got cheated on. Yeah, I believe that as well.
Right? Because somebody who's at the top of their fucking game and who's attracting and growing, the likelihood of them getting cheated on is very small. And if they're cheating and then maybe they just don't feel like they can level up to that person and they're just deselecting themselves.
Yeah, well, and I believe that a lot of people that cheat are the ones in the relationship that don't feel desired. They're sitting there going, God, I just am so lonely and I'm so alone. And then they're trying to connect with some other human. And so it turns into that. I think it's the fault of both people. It's that person not giving the other person that attention and the intimacy and the passion. And it goes both ways,
It's so interesting because I coach business so often, like entrepreneurs. And when we're going through things, it inevitably comes down to relationships too. And so many people are like, especially women, my husband isn't leveling up. My husband isn't doing this. My husband isn't doing that. And I'm like, have you told him? Mm-hmm. Does he have any clue? Well, it's almost like they're leaving little breadcrumbs around for the husband to figure it out. And men do this too.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, did you give him the opportunity to rise? Like, suggest it. Did you say, this is a non-negotiable? This is what I expect. Like, are you willing to have the uncomfortable conversation over and over and over again? Are you willing to just leave it all out on the table? Like, if this isn't going to work, I want to know that I've exhausted every opportunity, especially if I have kids.
Yeah.
So I'd be able to look in the eyes of my children and be like, I did everything I could possibly do to honor the love I have for your mother. Mm-hmm. Rather than like completely bitch out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They haven't even had the conversation, so they don't even know. So all this is just based on assumptions, not understanding what the other person is actually thinking. So usually just two people making assumptions and then going isolation, because no one's willing to have the conversation.
And then they just move further and further and further apart. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it just inevitably happens.
So someone's got to go first. And that person who goes first, if they come swinging, better than nothing at all.
Right.
But if they come with...
But they better expect a fight on that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're coming at it with love and like empathy, like we just had a fight just recently where I was so triggered and I was like, why are you, turning off? And why are you so upset about things? And then the second you opened up and talked about how stressful your day was and how all the things that you were dealing with and everything, I immediately had empathy and I was like, holy shit, I didn't realize. Like, then I had empathy for you and compassion and was like, I want to help you. I don't want to make it worse. I want to actually be there as your partner and help you through this.
But even coming swinging, and I don't mean full disclaimer, not hitting. I mean, like,
Yeah, because that's a non-negotiable for relationships.
of course, I think the weakest men in the entire world, or even women, but the weakest men are the ones who
100%.
get physical. Like, I will come find you if you're that person, right? Like, no good. Like, I don't get involved in people's shit, but especially having 3 daughters, like, I think man putting his hands on a woman is just
100%. And if a woman's in that situation, I 100% think that divorce is the answer. And again, we're not trying to give advice, but it's
that's not cool. But what I mean by coming out swinging, I mean like picking a fight, like a verbal fight.
Right.
And yes, love is a better answer, but even that anger is passionate.
Right.
You may, if you're able to potentially get there, you're gonna have to break some shit to break through, right? Mm-hmm. Love is preferable, but indifference is the worst.
Yeah.
And isolation is the worst. So if you have to kind of like poke the bear, which that's kind of your MO a little bit.
Wait, I poke your bear?
You poke me as the bear. Like when you want to fight or you're not upset or you're upset about something, it's like little like boom, boom.
Yeah, I do tend to do that.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Where I'll do love and anger, right? I'll just blaze. I could blowtorch, right? Or I can wrap you in the love, right? Like, it's just like, am I going to pick the lock or break down the door? So the conversation you should have before you get divorced is the fucking conversation. It's more conversations.
Yeah.
It's talk it through because you're probably not communicating.
Have any fucking conversation.
Yes.
Right? That's the whole answer to this entire question is what conversation should you should have any conversation in truth and honesty and vulnerability.
But what do you think about this? Because you could do, like my dad used to say, and sorry, Pop, sorry, Mom, but I don't know if this is true, but my dad used to say that my mom would use divorce as like, well, if you don't do this, I'm gonna divorce you. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oof, I don't know if if you use that on me, I'd be like, okay, well then fucking divorce me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't know if I would weaponize it like that. I don't think that's probably the best way of going about it. I think though there needs to be like, we need to address this. And I'm willing to go to the ends of earth to figure it out, but you got to meet me there too.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and I think that's laying down the sword.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to is just being able to have the conversation, be the one that's willing to put in the work, meet the other person there. And if the other person doesn't show up, like you said, all the time, and you've given advice to our friends and our family, at least you can say you tried. And I feel like that's where my parents ended up not fully going there. They didn't try everything they could have.
I think you got to get some true, hard, decent advice because I don't think necessarily therapy is always the answer. Friends are not. Like my father is a king at giving me advice with you. He always takes your side, even when you're wrong. Because he never wants to be the father that's like, you're always right, Dave. Like he's like, well, maybe. Like,
look at it from her perspective.
100%, which is very effective.
Yeah.
You know, and he doesn't want me to be weird with you, and he doesn't always agree with you. But I'm lucky that I have that. But if you have that type of person who's like, if you're asking advice from people with shitty marriages, consider the source of where you're getting your information. Yeah,
I think it's important to, like, if we were, every time we came home and our kids were exhausting and we had long, stressful days at work and all these things, like maybe having that conversation in a different environment, going on a trip, going somewhere else, driving, doing something, but getting out of your everyday environment, I think is also really important because it changes things, right? Takes the roles out of the equation, the mother role, the work role, all these things, and you can have just a conversation.
So the conversation that you need to have before you get divorced needs to happen in a different location as well. A real conversation that you may not like and that you may have to go through some shitty things about yourself while you're having this conversation and really open your eyes and come out maybe a little bit bruised and battered, but stronger for it. And on the other side of every hard conversation is a stronger relationship.
Yeah.
If you're willing to go there. So the challenge to all of you listening to this right now is, what is the conversation that you need to have that you've been putting off? And then the follow-up is, are you willing to have it?